Yeah, not the greatest picnic weather.
I came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it hasn't been raining all morning. The last 5 minutes.
Whoops. He came over here.
We gotta move the table back. Sorry about that phone. There. Yep, the table. Yeah, no, 1, 2, 3. Oh, you shook Justin's hand. Good Justin, you shook up. Lovely global warming.
Sorry?
From my beer.
Yeah, sorry.
Mark.
Hey, how you doing?
You have my support for Southwest Michigan. I'll do whatever I can for whatever you want for.
Yeah, we'll help you whenever we can. And should you make the decision for 1%? You get wet?
You got that, right?
I will find the chairman of the party.
Make sure I get it.
Hey, I'll get Keith. Yeah, you want me to get Keith?
Yeah. I'm gonna go grab Mr. Pagel and round up all the speakers.
They'll let me get a photo with them where you take it real quick? Yeah. Oh, yeah. How do I do it? That button up there.
Keith, chair of the party, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me here.
All right. About 2 o'clock-ish?
Yeah, sure.
Still work for you?
How do you want to do it?
I don't know.
I just do what my standard tells me. So.
You know what? You know what? We're just going by the seat of our pants. What my intention was to let our local officials speak a couple words.
What's up?
Hello!
You'll be there.
That's just
Awesome. I make sure I get that little clip I want.
That'd be okay? Yeah. I'll take some questions.
Would you like a coat?
Cool.
Yeah. Are you cold?
I'm cool.
What kind of surprise is this?
Nice.
I have a nice coat in the car. Just holler if you want a coat.
Thank you.
We still want to speak at 2. We were gonna, in a few minutes here, just start the few speakers. They're only gonna take a minute or 2. And then did you say you want to take time?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
if I get it.
I think people like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You guys probably don't have to fight.
No, we do.
Out here? No, I mean up there, but out here. Not for someone to ask questions, right? People
Yeah.
can shout there.
I'll check out that.
Any chance I could take a photo with you real quick with that camera? Sure. There we go.
There we go. Mic?
Yeah.
Is the mic wireless?
No, but it's got a long cord on it. But actually, mine isn't plugged in. You got to ask Gregor. Yeah. I will. I don't even know your last name.
Cody Scott. We're Facebook friends now. He was there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jim, real quick.
Yeah, I will.
The congressman's got to take a photo, apparently. I probably just delayed it for a minute every day. All right, Al can go first. We'll hop in here with Justin. Stay right there. Right here? You're good. Yeah, we're good. All right. All right. Smile pretty, Justin. Where's your phone? Let me get a picture. Do something like that.
Yeah, if you can take pictures, multiple pictures if you want. Hold on. That one. Oh. Do you want to take a few pictures around? Because I can immediately upload them to the event page and stuff.
We've got music from Justin, so I can upload them on
Awesome camera. Okay, she's not even using. Would you like to take some pictures of Justin so I can upload it right from here to the event page right away?
That we have
that one that he's going to give up.
in front of that. Our plan is this. We'll start with 79th District Representative Al Pashoka here in just a second. And we'll follow him with Senator John Prose, and then Representative David Pringle. And we'll just go down the list of some local officials. But at 2 o'clock, pretty close to 2 o'clock, we'll interrupt that stream, and we'll introduce Justin Amash and have him speak to us or take questions. Get your questions ready for Justin Amash. Justin is the U.S. Congressional Representative from the 3rd District, Grand Rapids area. So if you have any questions for him, get those ready for him. And then we'll commence with more local officials, okay? That's how we'll lay this out. And at this point, we'll give the microphone to Al Pashoka. All right, Berrien County Republicans, how you doing? Hey, first of all, let's have a big round of applause for if we could have the committee members stand who helped put on the picnic. All of our committee members stand up. Let's hear it for them. What a great job. Now, I don't know if you saw this letter to the editor this week in the paper. It was from a Benton Harbor City Commissioner, and he was blaming all the problems in Detroit on Republicans. So I ran into this fella 2 days ago.
I'm going to try and watch.
And I said, Commissioner, I got a couple of questions for you. When was the last Republican mayor in Detroit? Well, guess what his response was?
Oh, he's fine.
He didn't know.
Actually.
I did. It's 1957. And I said, Commissioner, when was the last Detroit City Council member who was a Republican elected in Detroit?
Do you want to watch the camera then? Yeah.
And he said, I don't know. Well, I do. It was 1970. Now, the reason I want to mention Detroit is because we do not want to go back to 2009 in Michigan, where the Democrats want to take us. Because we see what's happening in Detroit, right? Higher business taxes, right? Driving people out. Higher property taxes. Unsustainable debt. $20 billion in the hole. Going bankrupt. When we got to the legislature in 2010, actually 2011, we had the same problems. Michigan had $70 billion in unfunded debt and liability, a $1.5 billion deficit, 900,000 jobs lost, the worst business tax in the history of business taxes. And what did we do? We made about 100 conservative reforms. We eliminated the Michigan business tax. We cut spending. We balanced the budget, and we paid down the debt by $21 billion. How about that? But the Democrats want to take us back to 2009. They're organizing. They're getting ready for next year. We don't want to turn Michigan into Detroit. Do we? We've got to come together, work together, and make sure that we hold on to the House, we hold on to the Senate, we win the governor's race, and Michigan continues moving forward. Because in the last 3 years, we've created 180,000 private sector jobs. We balanced the budget every year early. Those are the types of reforms that we need to continue to make. So I'm excited to represent you. I'm proud to represent you. I want to thank you for your feedback. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. But I always appreciate hearing from you, listening, and trying to make a difference for Southwest Michigan. And with that, I turn it over to my senator, your senator, Senator John Prose.
Thanks, Al. Berrien County Republicans out at a picnic with beer being served. That's the way it's always been. How about that today, huh? Fantastic. It's a little wet today. I gotta tell you, the history of this picnic, for some of those old timers out here who trained me up a few years ago, it used to be about a 3-day Republican picnic. Get that, a 3-day Republican picnic. I recall that there were some big RVs that got pulled into Radewald's farm. Who here went to Radewald's farm back in the day? There's some hands back here. There we are. That 3-day bash was exactly this kind of feel, was exactly this kind of excitement. And as we think about all those folks who used to be a part of it, I got a question for you. Who here can stand and show that you're the first timer to a Berrien County Republican picnic? Can you stand up so we can recognize each and every one of you? Huh? How about that? You all represent, thank you, a big hand for them. You all of you, families, moms, dads, grandparents, brothers, uncles, everybody, you all represent the force that will help us to make the change we need in Washington with folks like our Congressman Fred Upton, Congressman Justin Amash, the great people that we have representing us in West Michigan and in Southwest Michigan. We are so fortunate to have those good people in Washington. We are also fortunate to have great people that I get to work with in Lansing, and Al and Dave Pagel. I'll tell you what, you've got some hard-working people that happen to be in the House of Representatives trying to make a difference. And it's an uphill battle at times, right? But here's the deal. As we go out as precinct delegates, as we go out as this new group of folks participating in Berrien County Republican politics, we're bound by one thing, which is what? We're bound by first and foremost being Americans. Very well, the rights in the Constitution, obviously. But as Americans, we do what? We gather together under that flag of freedom. That flag of freedom that so many men and women have died and fought for. Those so many men and women are being honored today in Baroda, aren't they? They're being honored today. Support our Troops Festival. When you finish here, head on over to Baroda to support our troops. That's where we're going to go in a few minutes too. And it's just that important. Why is that important? Because what we do in this party is push forward a set of ideals that matter. A set of ideals that make a difference in our community. A set of ideals that talk about prosperity, that talk about individual liberty, that talk about freedom, that talk about the ability to associate with whomever we want, and the ability not to have the infringement of the federal government upon us and the actions and the activities that we do. In fact, we can gather together as Republicans today in this site because of those men and women that have fought under that flag of freedom for each and every one of us.
Right now, actually.
That flag of freedom has given us the chance to work hard in Lansing. What does that mean for us? That means that we have seen that job growth that Al talked about. Job growth that did not happen in the decade that I had the chance to serve with Justin in Lansing. During that period of time, we lost almost 1 million jobs. That 180,000 jobs that Al just referenced, that just doesn't happen. That happens because you change the direction and you let loose those individual businesses to take the risk to invest and to hire Michigan families and Michigan people. That is starting to make a difference today. But the noise that we're making is not done yet. Now here's why. If you talk to anybody else across the country, and Al referenced it in his comments, what have they heard? They hear one thing: Detroit. You and I both know Southwest Michigan is not Detroit, and Southwest Michigan doesn't end at exit 79 in Kalamazoo. It continues on into Michigan's great Southwest. Most everybody else in our region knows it. It's important as we travel the country, as we travel the region, we remind people that Michigan has everything going for it, and Detroit trailing behind. It will get better in Detroit, and we are going to lead the way for that. So I am honored to be here. I am excited about our opportunities for the future. But next year's critical election is going to be up to each and every one of us in our communities, in our churches, on the street corners with folks we run into and talk to make sure that they understand those ideals of freedom and liberty that we fight for every day. As Republicans, that's our chance to make a difference and make sure that we keep Washington, bring Washington back where it belongs, keep the House, keep the Senate, and keep Governor Snyder as we work forward to make a difference in Michigan. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Al and John. Dave, you want to say a couple words? Michigan State Representative, 78th District, Dave Pagel. Sorry.
Yeah, we're all bald. Shaggle. All bald men look alike to you?
I shaved my goatee so we wouldn't get confused today, but just a couple of quick words. I know we have a great speaker to come up real shortly, but I just want to thank everyone from the 78th District for giving me the honor to represent them in Lansing, to be a part of the group that Al has described, and to continue the progress that the fine Republican group, a majority in Lansing, the things that we're accomplishing to promote business in Michigan, to promote freedom in Michigan, promote personal responsibility that goes along with that freedom, promote a limited government, less regulation. I think we're fighting for some very great causes. We have our disagreements, but I've come up to a few individuals this noon here who disagreed with me strongly on a couple issues, and we've had friendly, cordial greetings. I appreciate that so much, the respect that's here in this group. It's just an honor. I've served for 7 months now. I'm learning the things that Sharon Tyler never told me about, but it's still a great place to go to work every day in Lansing, and it's a privilege and an honor to represent you, and I will continue to fight for the values that we as Republicans hold dear. Thank you very much.
All right. There are a few other local officials around. I think from here we'll just have a raise of hands so that you can recognize them. Sheriff Paul Bailey in the back. Clerk Sharon Tyler here in the front. I think our surveyor John Comer has departed. And then some commissioners. I saw Commissioner Neil Nitz. Neil, where are you? Also Commissioner Bob Worley. There you are. And retired Commissioner Don Ryman is here. All right. From there, if I missed any local officials, we can get down into the great state of Hager. I see Izzy is here. Very good. Did I miss anyone? Anyone else? Doreen? Chickamine Township, where is Doreen? There you are, okay. Three Oaks Village President up here in the front. Very good. We thank all of our local elected officials for all the work that they do, all the big decisions that are needing to be made. So we thank them all, and we want to give opportunity for them to speak. As there's one more, at least individual here, Brad. I think now's a good time for you to. You had a couple words you wanted to speak, I think. Yeah. Unless you want to do it after Justin. Depends on how long you wanted to speak. You're going to do it after? Okay. Brad Swartz happens to be our regional field director, Kalamazoo office, an office that the Michigan Republican Party just set up, one of 11 offices around the state in preparation for the election coming up in 2014. So Brad represents that office out of Kalamazoo. We'll give Brad a couple minutes. Vic Fitz, I think, had to leave, but Vic Fitz was here a little bit earlier, those that had met him. He's our 6th District Chairman. 6th District is Fred Upton's district. It represents 5 or 6 counties: Cass, Van Buren, Berrien, St. Joseph County, Kalamazoo County. Did I miss any? And Allegan, yes, there we go. So Vic Fitz is our 6th District Chair, and he was here for a little while. He was on his 3rd picnic, and I think he had 2 more to go yet for today. So he said hi as he came through. So then, with no further ado, I think Jeff has a few words in addition to introduce our guest speaker today. Our own Fred Upton, U.S. Congress 6th District, sends his regrets. He and Amy are off to another function as well today, but Justin is a fellow of our own Fred Upton, and let Jeff further introduce.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming out. I really appreciate everybody coming out on what has turned out to not be the most beautiful day, so thank you for taking the time. I wanted to thank all the young Republicans, the Berrien County Republican Party, and the Tea Party for all their help. Without their help, I could not have made this event a success. So when I was tasked with organizing the picnic, and the young Republicans were in charge of it, I was thinking about, well, who is the speaker that represents the next generation of Republicans? And the obvious choice was Representative Amash. He's a principled constitutional conservative. As he states himself, he follows a set of principles, follows the Constitution, and bases all his votes on limited government, economic freedom, and individual liberty. He also goes out of his way to inform the public on all his votes and reasons behind taking any certain position. He's probably the most transparent congressman in the history of the United States. You can go on Facebook and you can see what every bill is about, how he voted, and why he voted the way he did. He is a Grand Rapids native. He has degrees from the University of Michigan in economics and law. In Congress, he's a member of the Joint Economic Committee and the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. He also serves on the following Oversight and Government Reform subcommittees: National Security and Government Operations. In his previous term, he was one of the few representatives to have perfect attendance. He doesn't miss a vote. He's also been a leading critic of the unconstitutional war in Libya, the indefinite detention provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act, the Stop Online Privacy Act, otherwise known as CISPA, and he is also one of Time Magazine's 40 Under 40 rising stars of U.S. politics. So, without any further ado, the Berrien County Republican Party, the Berrien County Young Republicans, warmly welcome the U.S. Congressman representing Michigan's 3rd District, Justin Amash.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here. Flew in late last night and had a parade this morning over in my district. It was a great parade, and people were welcoming me back after this very difficult week, which you might have followed on C-SPAN. But it's great to be here with all of you. It's great to see Sharon and to see John, who was up here earlier. I worked with them in the state legislature, and it's great to be in your area and be with you guys again. It's great to see so many young people here today, and I want to thank you for inviting me. Young people are a critical part of the Republican Party, and if we're going to keep this party growing, we need those young people to stay involved. And young people believe more than anyone I know in the ideals of limited government, economic freedom, and individual liberty. I hear it from young people across my district, young people across the state, and when I'm in Washington, D.C., I always have visitors coming in, young people from across the country coming in and saying, thank you for inspiring me, thank you for keeping the flame of liberty alive. And how many of you followed what was going on this last week in Congress? There was a very important issue in front of us, and I'm sure many of you have heard of the NSA's phone records collection. And so what the NSA is doing is collecting the phone records of every single person in the United States without any suspicion. So basically, and they've actually released this information. You can go onto the Director of National Intelligence's website, dni.gov, and they've released this information that they actually collect all of the phone records. About every 3 months, they put in an order saying we want to have the phone records of every one of your customers, and they send this out to the phone companies. And so what they get is the data of who you're calling and when you're calling. And we don't know, those of us who are not on the Intelligence Committee, just so you're aware, we don't get all the information. The operations and in many cases the law that they're operating under is secret. So believe it or not, we have a Congress for the United States that is not being informed about what the law is. So they very well could have the ability to do things beyond just track your phone calls, your phone numbers, and who you're calling to. But it's hard for us to get the information about what more they're doing. And that's because there's a secret FISA court that operates. So there's a secret court with secret judges making secret laws. And the only reason a lot of this came to light, whatever you may think of him, was because of the disclosures by Edward Snowden. Otherwise, members of Congress would not have known about the aspects of this program. The Patriot Act was passed in 2001 after the September 11th terrorist attacks. And the way the Patriot Act was written, you were supposed to have some connection between the records you seek and a person who's a suspect. So the collection of records has to be relevant to the investigation. Well, the way the word relevant is being interpreted by the FISA court, we have discovered, is simply to mean useful. So not really relevant, just useful. So the court has determined that everyone's phone records in the United States are useful to the investigation of terrorism generally. And therefore they're collecting all of your data. So we had this big battle this past week, and it took a lot of work to get that amendment to the floor. They don't normally allow you to put an amendment on the floor that they don't want to be on the floor. So our leadership was not really keen on having a vote on this amendment. But I will tell you that despite all that, at the end of the day, for whatever reason, Speaker Boehner decided that it was appropriate to bring this amendment to the floor, to have a debate on it. And for that, I do applaud him for that. I think that that was a courageous move on his part. I can't be sure why he decided ultimately to do that, but that was important. That made a big difference, and it allowed us to have this debate, which you may have seen on C-SPAN the other day. And what it really comes down to is whether we think, as an American people, that the government should collect all of these records on us, or whether we think that we can be secure as a country without having them invade that sphere of our lives. And I think we can have security and liberty. I don't think we need to go and violate the Fourth Amendment to keep our country secure. And the important thing to understand about this debate is the legal reasoning that those who are opposing, who have opposed my amendment, and those who are pushing in the other direction, you have to understand the legal reasoning they're using. Their argument is that anything that is stored with a third party is no longer private, and therefore the government can access it. That's the legal theory they're operating under. Now, right now, their assurances that they're making publicly are, oh, we're just getting telephone records, nothing else. But you have to understand, that's a policy decision on their part. They don't actually think the Constitution restricts their ability to get your content. So, there are other areas where our privacy is at risk under this legal theory. Let me give you an example. Let's say you take a picture of your family on your iPhone or videos on your iPhone. Well, those videos and pictures are uploaded to the cloud on Apple's server. Under the government's legal theory, they're telling you that because it's on an Apple server somewhere else, it's no longer private. The government can then come and access it if that's what they chose to do, if that's how they decided to operate. Now, they tell you they don't operate that way right now, but it's important to understand that their legal theory allows them to do that. And what I've been telling my colleagues is that if that's the interpretation of the Fourth Amendment that we're going to adopt, if we're going to say that anything that's held by a third party is no longer protected by the Fourth Amendment, is no longer private, well then in the digital era, you might as well throw away the Fourth Amendment. Because the Fourth Amendment has no meaning in a world where all of our papers and effects, most of our papers and effects are digital, if you're going to say that when you store them with a third party, the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply. Because then we have a world where there is no Fourth Amendment. Everything can be accessed. And there's another program which you may have heard about. If your emails are stored on a server, say Gmail, for more than 6 months, the government also treats those as though they're thrown away. So if you had, let's say you get an email, you open it up and then it sits in Gmail for 6 months. Well, the government says because you left it there on Google's server for 6 months, it's no longer private. They treat that the same as though you took a piece of physical mail and threw it in your trash outside. Now, of course, that's not what it's like. All of us have reasons why we keep emails. We might have received a nice note from someone that we want to keep. We might have receipts. We bought things online. We want to keep them for more than 6 months. Maybe we want to keep them for a year or 2 years or forever. It doesn't become the government's property to go and search it just because we kept them on a server. So what we're facing right now, I think, is a scary moment in our history where technology is being used by the government against the public in a way that I think is very threatening to our long-term liberty. Technology has helped bring liberties to so much of the world. It's helped expand liberty by spreading information. It helped me become a congressman because I was able to use Facebook and Twitter and other social media to reach out to people in new ways. But it's also a concern going forward that technology may be abused by the government. And that's something that we need to be very careful about. And that's something that as a Republican Party we need to watch very carefully. Because if we really believe in limited government and economic freedom and individual liberty, we need to protect that on all fronts. And that includes protecting it on the digital front. So I want to thank you again for having me here. I actually want to open it up for questions. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about any topic. So why don't we do that? But thank you so much. I don't know if you have a mic, but you might have to yell. I can tell you what newspaper reports have said. Newspaper reports have said they've been collecting the data for 7 years. You have to keep in mind, I go to classified briefings, and there are things that happen in the classified briefings that I'm not permitted to talk about, but I can tell you what newspaper reports have said. Yeah. What's about?
The phone records they have.
What about Obamacare? How do we get rid of it? Well, you stop funding it. You don't fund it, and we have these appropriations bills that come up that fund Obamacare, and people vote for them. And I don't understand it. Because we were sent to Congress, especially those of us in the class of 2010, the ones who were elected during the wave in 2010, we were sent to Congress to stop Obamacare. So when a vote comes up to fund Obamacare, you should vote no.
We got to turn down. I have a mic here. If you want to bring your questions to this mic, that'll keep them coming in a certain order as well.
Mr. Amash, it's kind of a personal question, but when you go in these briefings and classified meetings, do they just not even think about the rule of law? Do they just dismay it as it doesn't exist? Or, I mean, how do they talk about it? Do they even talk about it? Or?
Well, I don't know how to talk about it to you, but it's classified. But I would say they have a particular interpretation of the Constitution that I don't agree with.
Pretty blunt forward, I mean, just reading it, you know, as in that.
They have a view of the Fourth Amendment in the Constitution that I think does not comport with reality, that certainly does not comport with the intent of the founders, and it's scary. I've had these debates in these briefings, and the good news is I get an opportunity to ask a lot of questions and get a lot of people on the record. It's behind the scenes, but I can certainly ask questions in front of my colleagues that put people on the record and make them aware of when maybe they're being lied to, so that in the future they can take proper action.
Is this new for all the congressmen that have just heard about it, or have they known about this and just not spoke about it? I mean, I know you're as, kind of not as a rookie now, but have worked your way up as a true leader and a libertarian, being in there defending our Bill of Rights and Constitution, but I mean, just as in that, do they know about it, or have they known about it?
Let me tell you what happens and why it's very difficult. If you go to one of these briefings, if you don't ask exactly the right question, they don't give you the exact right answer. So it makes it very difficult. And I can talk to you about a public briefing that was had. This is not classified, but an example of how difficult it is. So there was an Intelligence Committee public non-classified briefing in which one of the NSA generals was asked. I think it was General Alexander, but someone on NSA was asked, well, is there an on-off switch to listen to people's telephone calls? And the person said, the person who responded from the NSA said no. And then the questioner repeated, so you're saying you can't just flip a switch to listen to people's calls? And the person said no. Well, believe it or not, the fact that the person framed it as flipping a switch might affect how the answer goes. Because it might be truthful that they don't flip a switch, that they don't literally, physically flip a switch. But maybe there's some other way in which they listen. They press a button. So that's why it becomes very tricky. Now, I don't know that that's the case, but with these questions and answers you get, you have to be very precise. They're not going to volunteer something. And that makes it very difficult. In other settings, they might have you come down to a room. They put you in a room with an Intelligence Committee staffer, and you're not allowed to bring your staff in, obviously. You can't bring in anything. You can't take anything out of the room. And they put a stack of papers in front of you with maybe 100 or 200 pages, and they say, here it is, here's the classified information. Well, if you're not a lawyer or not versed in this stuff, good luck finding the information. It might actually be in there in some sentence, but you're not going to find it. Are you going to sit there for weeks just sifting through this stuff and analyzing it? So it becomes very difficult to get the information. That's why there's a lot of members who have been to these briefings, but they don't come out really knowing that much.
First of all, Congressman, I just want to thank you for coming out here today. I can't express how important it is, I think, for elected officials to come out and talk to their constituents, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing in leadership in Congress. protecting the Constitution and our civil liberties. One of the things that's been on my mind, and I'm sure other people have been thinking about this too, is the upcoming Senate race in 2014. And as you know, the only candidate from the Republican Party that's announced so far is Terry Lynn Land. And I think you know her better than probably most of us do. And so I was just wondering, in your opinion or from your perspective, is she someone who will work in the Senate to protect those libertarian values, to protect the constitutional principles?
Well, I like Terry Land. I think that's something we have to have more of a conversation about. And I hope to spend some time sitting down with her and seeing where she is on all those issues. I think those are very important issues.
Okay. And I'm just, because I know people would hate me if I didn't ask while I was here, but is there any time frame that you're working on about whether or not you're going to announce?
I'm still looking at it, but you certainly have to make a decision by about the fall. Okay. Otherwise, it becomes a very difficult battle.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And it's already a difficult battle, no matter what. This is a Democratic state still, and for a Republican to win a Senate race, you have to have a very good year for Republicans. So,
thank you.
Yep.
Congressman, thank you very much for coming here today. I want to try to do what you ask the right question in order to get the right answer.
Yeah.
And my question is actually, I believe, directly related to the NSA, but it goes back a little bit to September 11th and then to the authorization of use of military force, which eventually evolved into the NDAA or some version thereof. We've been doing a lot of things here in Berrien County regarding the National Defense Authorization Act. I know that you're probably familiar with the Senate and the House passing a resolution, even though it has no teeth, there's no penalties associated with it. But however, they did pass a resolution condemning anybody in Michigan to going forward with doing any of these. My question is, with the NSA spying and the NSA records, if they have an option to look at your records, and if you tie that directly into unconstitutional and indefinite detention, is there a possibility that all of a sudden they could use the secret information that they find off your phone records and then, quote unquote, take you and arrest you? Because if you don't have any Fourth Amendment rights in one place, then you're not going to have any due process rights in the other. And is that a concern of yours?
Yeah, I think that's possible. Yeah, I don't see why not under the law. They can use the records that they obtain to prosecute people for ordinary crimes, and then certainly they could prosecute you for terrorism and being suspected of it. And they could, under the NDAA, the government certainly has the authority to detain anyone who's suspected of being associated with Al Qaeda, and it's just a determination made by the executive branch. There's no real oversight.
Thank you.
Thank you, for coming today. I listened to talk radio, and they were talking about police taking pictures of your license plates, store that. How's that tied to everything else going on? Are you guys aware of that?
Yes, we're aware. I'm especially aware of it in Washington, D.C., because they've been doing that for a while. What police cars have on the front, at least in D.C., is a camera, and it automatically takes pictures of everyone's license plate. So it's like a real-time thing. And there's enough police officers around, enough cars around, that they essentially have a map of where every car is all the time, because it's just fed into a computer. Now, a lot of this stuff was not possible. This is why I warn that we have to be really concerned as a party and as a people, American people, about the power the government has and the ability to abuse this technology. We get to the point where we have no privacy whatsoever. And people say, well, what do we care if you're not doing anything wrong? It's because there are a lot of private transactions that we just don't want people to know about. There are things that we're involved in that we don't want people to know about because we have business transactions. We have transactions with our doctor. Maybe we're calling our doctor because we're sick, or because we're pregnant, or maybe you have things in your life that you're embarrassed about, but they're not illegal. There are lots of reasons why we have to have privacy in a country to be a free country. And my mom came from Syria. She was born in Damascus. And growing up, she would tell me how, when I was growing up, she'd tell me how when she was back there, they were afraid to make phone calls, they were afraid that people who were their neighbors might be spies on them. And we don't want that kind of culture here, that kind of society here where everyone's suspicious of everyone else and everyone thinks their neighbor's a spy.
You keep talking about the government's legal theories on why they can collect this information. Is there a process by which that legal theory can be tested in front of the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this phone records issue, I think, creates an opening for a lawsuit because the government has been open about it. The most difficult thing historically has been getting standing, which means to sue someone, you have to show that you were actually harmed. You have to have standing. You have to show that you can go in front of a court and you were affected. It's been very difficult to do that because everything was secret. But because the Verizon court order was released, people actually have a document they can point to, and if you're a Verizon customer, you can say, yeah, they're spying on me. They're collecting my phone records. So I think that creates an opening.
One of my favorite commentators says that right now we are actually in a post-constitutional phase of the Republic. And as someone who has spent now a few years in that faraway city that is governing us from the east side of the nation, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think the survivability of the Republic is right now?
Well, I would say 7. I mean, the country has gone through a lot. American people have been through a lot, and we've survived. When I come back to my district, and when I go across the state, coming here, for example, the American people are not happy with what's going on in Washington. They're speaking out, and not enough members of Congress are listening yet. But it's changing. It's changing. Let me give you an example. On my amendment, for example, if you were a Republican congressman who's been in office for 5 years or less, so you're one of the more newly elected members, a majority of those Republican congressmen supported my amendment to rein in the NSA. But if you were here for more than 5 years, we were beat 2-1. It was 2 times as many people said no on my amendment as were for it. So there is some shifting going on, and I think a lot of the newer members are much more inclined to be promoting liberty, and I think are listening to their constituents better, frankly.
Probably a little off topic here, but something that's been blowing up my Facebook page for the last week or so. As a lifetime member of the NRA, and also a lifetime fan of Mr. Ted Nugent. In light of Ted's recent outbursts of racial and social bias and slurs, along with those of Mr. Sharpton and others concerning the Martin Zimmerman case and the backlash thereof, what gives Eric Holder or President Obama the right or the duty to speak out on this particular subject when tens of thousands of much more hideous crimes happen on our soil every day without government intervention or comment? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think people who are in elected office, whether it's the president or a member of Congress or anyone else, should be very careful about speaking out about court decisions that are being made that are, criminal trials. I think that's very, very dicey, and that's something we should avoid. Because there was a jury that made a decision, and we followed the rule of law in this country.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for your Facebook posts. I've been following you on Facebook for some time now. And the education that I get from understanding what the vote is supposed to be, what it's about, and how you vote, is I would encourage anybody to be friends with Justin on Facebook so you can get that knowledge. That's how you know what's going on. So I just thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank you for doing what you're doing there. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed. And to clarify, you don't have to friend request me to follow my page. You just have to click like on the page. So
Are you at your limit?
I can't turn you down.
I have a solution to winning 2010.
Okay.
Or
2014?
2014.
We won 2010.
Yeah, sorry about that. And also a way to solve IRS spending, all the other ones spending. Every penny spent by the government at all branches, at all levels, should be online, what it was spent for, and what that item cost. And which department bought it, and zero in on all of those expenditures. They couldn't be having these wild parties if everything was online.
Yep, I think that's a great idea, and it's something I promoted as a state legislator, and I'm on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee in Congress, and that's something we would look at. That's something that would go through our committee. I would, go ahead.
Yeah, the Republicans should lead in this. This could win everything for them if they would get that online.
I agree. I think that's very important. And one of the things I do, if you go to my amash.house.gov, my page, I post all of my office expenses. I post my staff salaries. I post my health benefits that I receive. You can see which selections I made. You can tell me if my selections were wrong. So I think it's important that we have that kind of transparency where you can see if a government's going to spend your money, taxpayer money, you should see how we're spending it.
How likely is it that they'll be able to strip us of our Second Amendment rights?
Well, hopefully not very likely. I have confidence in my colleagues in the House, my Republican colleagues, that we will stand strong and prevent the rest of the Congress from pushing something through that strips us of our fundamental right to bear arms.
Wasn't Obama trying to push something through the UN too, like a UN gun ban treaty?
Yeah, there are efforts to go to the UN and push some treaties that would affect our gun rights, and that would have to go through the Senate, of course. But I think there are still enough members of Congress who are very supportive of the Second Amendment to stand up to that. So I'm hopeful. Thanks.
Hi Justin, I want to thank you too. I've been following you on Facebook for several years now, and I just so appreciate your explanation of every vote you take, and I've asked our representative Brett Upton to do the same thing, but so far it's had an effect. So we're trying. I actually have two questions. Am I allowed to ask two? The first one is, I'm having a hard time understanding why Democrats like John Conyers and some of our other Michigan Democrats actually joined you on this amendment, and that we only had, two others, Tivolio and Heisinger, that voted yes. Can you explain why, even like Michelle Bachmann, why these Republicans are voting for this amendment?
Well, Michelle is on the Intelligence Committee, so she's getting information that other members of Congress are not, and it also means that she's going to be more protective of her turf. A lot of the people on the Intelligence Committee are very protective of the fact that they get this classified information, and other members of Congress have to request and sometimes get it by special permission. So I think that's as far as I can go in saying, talking about what her motives might be. But and I think we have a very different opinion of how the Fourth Amendment operates. Actually, I was debating her at a Conversations with Conservatives event in D.C. the other day on the Fourth Amendment, and I think her interpretation of it is incorrect. The other question was about.
I haven't asked the other one.
No, but the other part of that question, sorry.
John Conyers.
Oh, why do Democrats? I think when you look at who voted yes and who voted no, you see people who were very strongly associated with leadership on both sides, the sort of leadership teams of both sides, ended up voting no. And the rank and file members who are maybe more independent or less beholden to the sort of leadership apparatus voted yes. And it doesn't matter which side you are. We're all hearing it from our constituents. When I go to town halls in my district, it's not just Republicans who are upset about this stuff, it's Democrats. And it's not a close call. I mean, I was receiving tweets on Twitter, and they're probably, I don't know, 1,000 to 1 in favor of my amendment. It's really not a close call, and there are many Democrats on there who said, thank you for what you're doing. So there are Democrats like John Conyers and others who I think were listening to their constituents about that issue and said, yeah, this is something that's really important. Those who are more associated with leadership are more reluctant, I think, to make these kind of changes. They say, well, it's been working, and they'll say, this is going great, and nobody really knows if their rights are violated. I mean, it's like, they're getting your telephone records, so what? So you really had the president, you had Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Boehner, and the sort of leadership teams on both sides allied against everyone else, is how it came down.
I have one other question.
Sure.
It's kind of a touchy question. I really like your libertarian views on everything except I think you changed your view recently on gay marriage and civil unions.
Yeah, no, I haven't changed my view on it. The Defense of Marriage Act has two parts, so it's important that people understand that. It's got two parts. One part had a federal definition of marriage. I have never supported having a federal definition of marriage because I think that marriage is a sacred union. It's not something that is the government's business. And as soon as you put the government in it, you run the risk. As soon as you get the government involved, you run the risk of having someone flip that and say, no, now the definition of marriage is this. And they flip it to something else. I've always believed the government should stay out of the definition of marriage business. That's not something, I'm an Orthodox Christian. In my church, we don't believe the government needs to be involved in our marriages. It's a religious sacrament. Now, there's a second part of DOMA which I support, which says that no state can impose its government definition of marriage on any other state. And I support that provision. So there's two parts of DOMA. I've always supported one part of it. I haven't supported the other part of it. And the recent Supreme Court case, what it did was it basically wiped out the first part. But keep in mind that there would never have been a case in the first place if we just didn't include a definition of marriage in there. So the reason there's a court case is because I think conservatives, with the right intentions, jumped the gun, put a definition of marriage in there, and now it's been reversed. And you would never had a court case in the first place if not for that. So, thanks.
Justin, I just want to reiterate what Cindy said, that we just appreciate so much your views and especially that you have been so diligent in your Facebook postings and letting everybody know what's going on. It's really hard to keep track for the average citizen. And that's what my question is as average, everyday citizens, what is it that we can do personally to be more effective in getting our elected officials to actually listen to us? Many of us are new at this still. And so do you have any thoughts on how we can better communicate or be, our voices be more strongly heard, I guess?
Yes, you have to believe that you matter. A lot of people I talk to think that what they say doesn't matter, that their representatives don't listen. Now, I would tell you that that's not correct. And in fact, the main reason